Hello everyone, thanks for coming outside with me today. Today we're going to revamp a very old video, one of the very first ones I made when I started the channel 5 years ago, and that is buying your first compound bow. I want to expand it a little bit and give a little bit more finite information than I did in that video, and hopefully a lot fewer ums and ahs as I go through it. So let's dive into buying a used compound bow as your first bow, buying a brand new one, and also covering the age ranges from kiddos to adults. In today's day and age, when it comes to buying your first compound bow, do not overwhelm yourself. Look at all the reviews you can find on YouTube and Archery Talk and other forums, but then don't head down 47 different rabbit trails looking at what's the best arrow, what's the best broadhead, what's the best release, what's the best quiver, sight, rest. You will literally melt your brain right out of your ears and you'll never buy anything and you'll never be happy with it. Do not worry about tuning your bow. Get it set to manufacturer specs. Draw it back and love the mystical flight of the arrow. Do not panic about shooting perfect groups. Do not panic about having perfect bullet holes through paper or getting bare shaft tuned. You're starting out, and your kid, or if you're a young adult, you're just starting out here with a sport that is totally new to you. Build up your strength, build up proper form. I'll put links to some of the form videos that I have in the description below. Enjoy the sport of archery. That is the #1 tool. If you are not having fun, then you are not getting the point of the sport of archery. Archery is for everyone, regardless of age, regardless of gender, regardless of where you are in the world. Archery is a universal sport. I'm so happy that I'm a part of it, and I've stuck with it all this time because I've enjoyed it. Sure, there are highest of highs and there are lowest of lows when it comes to my target practice and my bow hunting, but that doesn't mean I've stopped enjoying the sport, and that's what keeps me coming back. So sure, you can add all the bells and whistles and have all the highfalutin things that you want, but if you don't first and foremost work on you and your attitude and your enjoyment of the sport, you're totally missing the point. So make sure you do that first, and you will definitely be with this just as long as I have, if not longer. So let's first things first talk about two things that are very important when it comes to buying a compound bow. The first thing is understanding, are you done growing? And the second thing is, if you are done growing, what is your strength level? So let's first cover the first thing. When it comes to buying a bow for a kid, you want low poundage. I'm talking 10, 20, 30 pounds. That's even for the bigger kids, the 12, 13, and 14 years old. And if you're gonna buy a compound bow for that kid, understand that their muscles are not developed. Grown men and women, our muscles are not developed to shoot a compound bow 40, 50, 60 pounds. We're using muscle groups in a way that we don't usually use them, by drawing that high weight across our body like that. We're not used to doing that in today's day and age, and so starting out with a low poundage, pretty regardless of your age group, but in particular with the kiddos, is very important. The second thing to tie into the growing aspect is how big, if it's a kiddo, are they going to be, because your draw length is so important. Your draw length is by far probably the most important and critical thing when it comes to buying a compound bow, and understanding and getting your bow set up for you based on your draw length is almost more important than the poundage itself. If you're going to draw a bow super short, it's going to really ruin your form, and if you have to draw it super long, it's going to overreach you and you're going to hurt yourself. So understanding your draw length. Now, the easiest way to get a ballpark is to take your wingspan, or sometimes you could even just take your height and divide it by 2.5. So for me, that puts me in the realm of about 31.2 inches. So I have a 31-inch draw length, and I can play around with it. And there are certain bows that I shoot at 30.5 and some that I shoot at 31.5. So that number is not a perfect number, but it's going to get you very close. And when you do that wingspan, you can just do a nice relaxed outstretched arm wingspan. You don't want to be super stretched out and expanding your chest. It's going to get too long, and you definitely don't want to have a draw length that's too long. If you have to pick between a draw length that ends up being too short and a draw length that ends up being too long, 100% of the time, go with a draw length that's on the shorter side. So mine's 31.2. I'm going to start with 30.5 to 31, and that's where I'm going to start. I don't want to start overexpanding myself and round up. You need to go from 31.2 to 31.5, because I could overextend myself, injure myself, or be very uncomfortable in my draw cycle and how I anchor at full draw. All right, so you've decided your draw length, or roughly thereabouts, and then you've decided the poundage that you want to start at. And again, for a kid, 10, 20, 30 pounds at the most. For a grown-up, I strongly recommend starting in that 30, 40, 50 pound range at the most. You definitely don't want to be overextending yourself. So once you've decided on that, now you can figure out your budget, which is probably the biggest limiting factor for most people. I've been doing archery now for almost 2 decades. I have a large budget, if you will, in terms of what what I'm willing to spend on archery equipment. But if you're first starting out or you're buying for a kiddo for their first bow, even if you've been bow hunting for a long time or shooting a bow for a long time, that budget's going to be the biggest limiting factor. Expect to spend at a minimum $200 for a complete setup, as a minimum $200. And that is the cheapest of the cheap to get anything of some quality, Now, when it comes to buying stuff for a kid versus buying stuff for an adult, I have different qualifications that I'm allowed for a kid. So let me dive into that a little bit before I start talking about these more expensive bows here on the tree. So if you're a regular follower of the channel, you know that I'm all about American-made products. That's why I like Elite bows and Hamskea rests. I absolutely love Magnus broadheads and tethered saddle hunting equipment, all right here in the USA. But when it comes to buying something for a kid, when you don't know if they're going to even like the sport of archery, you want something that's super highly adjustable, and you want something that's low poundage and cheap. There's no real manufacturer here in the United States that's making something in that $200 price range. That comes as a complete kit. They might sell you the bow for $200, just the bare bow, but that doesn't include a sight, a rest, stabilizer, wrist sling, a peep sight, arrows, or a release. And so those things add up very quickly. So when it comes to buying that first bow for a kid, I have no problems with buying something from overseas, say China, Japan, or some part of the European or Australian overseas manufactured archery equipment. For that kid, those components do not have to be nearly as high quality because they're shooting such a low poundage and a low draw length. There's very little force put on those limbs. There's very little force put into an arrow, and you're just trying to get your kid out to have fun and shoot. And if they end up not liking the sport of archery and they don't stick with it, you don't want to be $500, $600, $700 in a hole over a kid's compound bow setup that your return on investment when you go to resell it is just not going to make up the difference. So buying something off of eBay, like from Toe Point Archery or Junjing Archery, there's a good buddy of mine, Stephen Hand from Archery Supplies down in Australia, and he does a whole bunch of great reviews on those products. I'll put those in the description below if you're interested. He sells a bunch of those to the folks of Australia that are looking to get their kids into the sport of archery. We here in the States, it's kind of a taboo thing to sell Chinese bows or Australian-made bows there by the SAS Corporation. It's kind of a taboo subject up here, but for a kid, you just want them to shoot a stinking bow. You want them to get out and enjoy the sport of archery. And if it comes with a kit with arrows and stabilizers and release aids and everything else, why not do it? And it's like $200, $250, $300 at the most. That's great for a kid. When they outgrow it, you can put it away, you can try to resell it. You're not that far into the hole. Now, when it comes to grown-up adult equipment and you're gonna be shooting 40, 50, 60, 70 pounds, now I strongly recommend that you look at local USA quality control, but also more importantly, due to that kid's bow, you can work on that kid's bow at home. It'll have nice rotating modules. We'll talk about that in a second. The limbs will be easily adjusted with an Allen key in order to change the poundage. You can work on that bow at home without the need of a bow press. But when you get to be in the adult size stuff and you're shooting, like I said, 40, 50, 60, 70 pounds, you're dealing with higher quality strings, higher quality components. You want to have a bow shop that knows how to work on that bow and work on that highly efficient piece of equipment. You do not want to buy something from a dealer, a manufacturer that your local dealer and your local shop has never seen before. They will not be able to help you nearly as well. Getting strings and cables will be very difficult. Helping to fix fine parts if you do have something break because you're using higher poundage and much stronger materials. You really are going to want to have a locally USA manufactured bow. PSE, Hoyt, Diamond, Matthews, Bear, Mission, Elite, whatever you want. My personal preference is Elite, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. But just because I like something doesn't mean I'm going to recommend it for everybody. And that goes back to that kid's bow. I want, as an adult, if you're going to be shooting, I want you to have a USA made bow. That means you're going to be able to get USA made parts, and you're going to be able to have a dealer and a manufacturer here in the States that's going to be able to help you if you have a problem. But the thing that I like about kids bows more than I like about adult bows is their adjustability. Sure, the parts aren't highly machined. You might see a lot of polymer and plastic in them, but the adjustability is huge. And that's why I really wish that every single bow that was made by a major manufacturer here in the States, no matter what age group it was designed for, they had simple, easy to adjust things. So for example, I wish all bows had the ability to have more of a weight range than just 60 to 70, 50, 60, 40, 50 pounds. That is just common to have one bow with one set of limbs only have a 10-pound weight adjustment. I wish this bow could go down to 40 pounds. It would triple the resale value. Now this bow here, the Elite Cure, has rotating modules. You don't need a bow press to change the draw length from 23 to 30 inches of draw length. That's insane. That's awesome. But this bow right here, one of my favorites, the Elite Energy 35, and my wife's Spirit, my Elite Spirit over here, these are a module specific and you need a bow press to change it. So when it comes to you as a brand new archer figuring out your draw length and figuring out your poundage for the first time, even though these bows are awesome and they're great and they're flagship level quality, they're not really meant for you right now. They will be eventually once you figure out your draw length, and in particular, if you're still growing, you definitely don't want to have a bow like this because you're going to have to buy extra parts later. So going back to the rotating module thing, more bows from more manufacturers are starting to have a rotating module where every draw length is on the cam. There are certain manufacturers that are still trying to catch up with the times on this. It took Elite until just last year in order to do it. I think they have a great bow here with the Cure, now with the Encore and the Remedy. Matthews is still a mod specific cam, so if you want to change the draw length, you have to buy different modules. You don't need a bow press for it, thankfully, but you do have to change on different modules. The older Hoyt bows, even up to about 2017, 2016, still needed different modules to change out. Now they're on a rotating mod system, which is awesome. But there are a lot of different bows from a lot of different manufacturers that you, as a brand new archer, might not know about. So that is the #1 thing I would look into when you go to buy a bow. Does it have a rotating module? And what is the limb poundage range? If it's only 10 pounds, if it's something low enough, like I said, that 40 to 50, then okay, maybe that'd be a good starting point. But then if you want to bump up to 60 to 70 pounds later, when you build up your strength, you're going to need a whole new bow or buying a whole new set of limbs, which for most bows is almost as much as the bow. So when it comes to buying a new bow for you or a used bow for you, do all the research you possibly can. I'll put links down to certain websites that I use to make sure that I've done the appropriate research on a bow before I buy it. This is by far the most common thing I see with people going to buy their very first bow. They'll go to buy a used bow or they'll go to buy a new old stock bow and they'll realize that they have not purchased a bow that is easily worked on. They have to take it to their shop. That shop might not be a dealer of that manufacturer. They might not have parts. And now on top of that bow purchase that you made, whether it was new or used, you're now buying extra parts and extra components and you're putting a lot more money into it than you really wanted to, and you haven't even gotten a sight, a rest, a release, the arrows, a quiver, anything else put on the bow. So really take your time and do your research on that long before you click pay. All right, so let's say you've done the research and you've done everything you needed, you've got it all figured out and you're ready to buy. But now you're looking at either a used bow or a brand new bow and you're just trying to weigh out whether you can buy a used bow that comes as a package deal or buy a brand new bow and then adding accessories later. Now, buying a used bow that's a package deal is a great way to go, or even buying a mid-price bow that's a package deal is also a great way to go. The issue with it is, and again, you have to do your research on this, if you have to take that used bow and change the draw length, are those arrows that they're selling going to work? Are they going to be too short? Are they going to be too long? Are they going to be the right spine? Are they going to be the right weight for what you want to shoot? Are you going to shoot target or are you going to hunt with them? There's a lot of different intricacies here. Now, there's a lot of ways to make your head spin about all this information by jumping online, go to Archery Talk and so on and so forth. But if you're looking to buy a used bow, send me an email. Follow links in the description below or a Facebook message or an Instagram message. I'd be happy to help you out. Send me pictures and all the information and I can try to help you out as best I can, give you a direct, simple answer. But if you want to do your own research, again, follow the other links and see if you can figure out exactly what spine of arrow you need, what draw length and length of arrow you need as it pertains to buying a used bow. Now, buying a new bow, hopefully they'll be able to cut that arrow to the correct length that you want. And usually I go for the inch over rule. So I have a 31-inch draw. I'll either shoot a 31-inch arrow or a 32-inch 24-inch arrow, which is usually full length. For most of you people at home that are normal length between like 26 to 29 inches, you can shoot anything from a 27 to a 30-inch arrow, going with that inch over your draw length rule. And the reason I like to do that is if you're going to hunt with this bow and you're going to put a broadhead on the end of that arrow, that'll put the broadhead out in front of your hand. It'll lengthen it past the shelf of the riser, and that'll let your broadhead stay out of your way and not cut your fingers as you draw or shoot the bow in the heat of the moment. Now, if you're brand new to the sport of archery, if you look at bows and you look at the cam styles and the limbs and all that sort of stuff, it can really start to freak you out. For example here, this Energy 35, this is a solid limb bow. It's very thin, right? Solid limb, has a what's called as a binary cam system, which means there's no yokes coming off the side, and it's also super long. This is 34 3/4 inches axle to axle. Then you look at this bow, then you look at my wife's bow here, and you're like, oh, it's also a solid limb design, but it's so much shorter. This one's only 31 inches axle to axle. So all these specs and all the brace height numbers and everything could really make your head spin. And as a first-time archer or someone buying a bow, here's just a great rule of thumb. The smaller the person, the shorter the axle to axle. And kids' bows have this nailed down. So for example, a good kid's bow would be about 25 to 28 inches axle to axle, maybe 29 or 30. You get into the women's bows, I wouldn't go anything more than 33 inches axle to axle. And as bigger guys, I like longer bows, 34, 35, even 38 to 39 inches axle to axle. It's a lot more bow, but I have a longer draw length. That string angle won't be as short. And I'm just a bigger dude in general. I can handle a larger size bow. This is a nice little light one for my wife. She's only about 5'2", 5'3", and so it works out really well. So when it comes to buying, whether it's a solid limb or a binary cam system or a cam and a half or a 2 cam system, don't sweat that. That means nothing to you. That's just how your bow mechanic is going to work on it, and they should know how to do all of those things. You just worry about the size of the bow, the overall mass weight, and the length of the bow, and that will help you out a lot more than looking at all the strings and all the yokes and all the fancy things that's not your job to work on. Another thing I want to talk about is getting accessories and buying that bow package. So if you buy a bare bow and you have to add things to it that are on your budget, or you buy it as a package, again, understand that you need to buy the things that are with the package, or maybe offer the seller splits them off because you may or may not actually need them, and save a few bucks along the way. But when it comes to me, and if you want to have higher quality equipment on your bow, you can do that and you can buy them separately. Now, do you need all of these things? I got a $300 sight on here, $150 worth of stabilizers, custom strings, $100 and some odd rest on here with this Hamskea Trinity. Do you need all this stuff? The answer is no, you do not need all this stuff, in particular as a first-time archer, first-time bow hunter. Now, somebody like me, this will be my 17th year wrapping up here of archery hunting and just shooting a bow in general. I really like having high quality, high-end stuff. I've been doing this for a very long time. And if you did any hobby for 17 years, you also would want to upgrade all of your things. Whether you're doing film work for YouTube, or you just enjoy getting out and birding, and you want a better pair of binoculars or telescope, or you like certain sports, you would be buying higher end equipment as you went along, particularly 17 years into your hobby. So yeah, for me, I'm going to put hundreds, if not thousands of dollars into my bow setup. Now, you at home, for the brand new archer just starting out, a couple $100, yeah, definitely. That is not outlandish to spend on a nice pair of pieces of equipment to add to your bow. Do you need to go over the top? You don't. You can add those pieces later if you find out that the archery and bow hunting is definitely a sport for you. Although if you stick around as long as I have, you'll find that it is definitely a sport for you, and you will be spending a lot more money. Just don't tell your wife or your husband. I guess ladies can also shoot. So that's all for this video. Again, if you have any questions for me about buying new or used equipment or anything else that pertains to the sport of archery and archery hunting, follow the links in the description below. Hit me up on Facebook, Instagram, send me an email, and yes, always leave a comment here on YouTube. Hope you're able to get outside, enjoy the sport of archery, archery hunting if you so choose. Definitely enjoy God's beautiful, albeit overcast creation, and we'll get to see you next time.